Well, speaking this late in the afternoon with so many fine presentations before us, I will repeat some of the things that you've already heard. We can't move into what I want to talk about without saying some of these things, and I even need to hit the past just a little bit. I know we've heard a lot about the past, but moving ahead, let me just go ahead and reiterate that yes, we do live in one of the most beautiful areas in the world. And this area is also extremely mineralized, very highly mineralized. We're known for our beauty in the mountains, its ruggedness, accessibility, but along with having critical, strategic, and precious metals in its hold. So these San Juan Mountains and the processes that form them are unique to very few locations on our planet. Locations sought after by those wanting to develop and make available the resources for our mutual benefit, and also those just wanting to preserve them and the surrounding areas so that they remain undeveloped. Well, you know, there is a reason why the immigrants from Austria, Italy, Sweden, Cornwall, and other places flocked here in the 1800s. They learned of the mineral potential and the economic benefits of developing these valuable resources, but they were also drawn here by the beauty, and for some, the similarities of their home countries. There are some of us who were drawn here when there were operating mines and exploration projects. Those were happening throughout these mountains. This was a place where we could have a good paying job, use our education and experience for the development of these resources, and also enjoy being part of these unique communities and this unique environment. You know, I've not met anyone who's moved here to live and work that wants to destroy our beauty, pollute our streams, or foul our precious air. But when living in an area that is this mineralized, so highly altered, containing natural water that has a low pH and heavy metals, how can we develop and use these minerals for the benefit of our society and not contribute unfavorably to the metal loading of our streams and rivers? And that's what all of you have been talking about this morning. Well, this is an interesting question, isn't it? Do you think I have an answer to this, and maybe a solution that we just plug in and make work? Well, I wish it was that simple. But it's going to have to be a continuing effort, requiring dialogue, continuing stretching of values, educating, adjusting, accepting others' concerns and viewpoints. And it really does mean, like many of you have talked about, we need to work together, keep working together. We need to have the lines of communication open and not be afraid to work with those who look at things differently than we do. Art Goodtimes talked about the Idorado remediation project, and this was back in the 1980s, and the state of Colorado came down with a projected, and in my mind, I remember $40 million program that was going to clean up, and on the Red Mountain side, remove all the tailings and the mine dumps in those areas. Now, what they proposed to do was to build a monstrous conveyor system on that Red Mountain side, pile up all the material on part of Ironton Park, and then turn the rest of Ironton Park into a huge sludge pond that would collect all the heavy metals over the next many years. Now, I refer to just so many years because this sludge was going to fill up this pond over time, and then the sludge was going to have to be removed and taken to a hazardous waste site somewhere, buried, and done away with in a manner that was never quite revealed nor thoroughly planned. Well, this was a time when I was a county commissioner in Ouray, and the local communities sort of put their hands up and said, no, we can't go along with this program. And this is where Art Goodtimes, the liberal type commissioner over in Telluride, got involved with a conservative mining type in Ouray County And we were able to sit around the table with many other people and try to come up with a solution. One of the things I want to point out about that drainage on that side, the Uncompahgre, and this was pointed out to us by our friend Rick Trujillo when he dug through the Dominguez Escalante journals and found that the Dominguez Escalante group going through that part of the country in 1776 came over the Uncompahgre Plateau, went on down to a river that they called the Rio de San Francisco, but they found out that the Utahs, as they called them, they didn't say Ute Indians, they said Utahs, U-T-A-S. They called it the Uncompahgre, A-N-C-A-P-A-G-A-R-I. And their interpreter told them that that meant Red Lake, because near the source there was a red-colored water that was hot and ill-tasting. So this is in 1776, before we miners, we settlers came into this area, and that's the way the Uncompahgre was at that time. Now, I've shortened the phrase to saying the Uncompahgre means red stinking water. Rick doesn't necessarily like that term that I use, but I think it's pretty close, and it describes what was there. So, a little bit later in 1874, the Hayden Survey was here in the Silverton area. They were up near the King Solomon Mountain, and they found water that they described as strongly impregnated with mineral ingredients as to be quite unfit for drinking. Well, going back to that Idorado remediation program, Governor Robner chose several of us to be on that negotiating committee. We came up with a plan that was accepted by Idorado, the state of Colorado, the EPA, and the local government entities. So am I saying nothing else needs to be done or nothing else can be done? Well, we do need to keep looking at these. We need to keep evaluating what was done and what is happening now with those. But we also need to look at what it's going to cost, who's going to pay for it, and what an acceptable solution might be. Now, from the mining perspective, we need to look at this in a manner that allows for future exploration programs and the development of these God-given resources that we have in this area. We need to look at our economies, our need for additional employment opportunities. We need to determine and look for the need of additional production of metals in our own backyard so that we're not solely dependent on other countries like China. Now I want to back up just a little bit farther than that, because in the spring of 1970 I was asked to speak at the first Earth Day celebration at Western State College. I was representing the mining industry again, but when I looked out at that crowd, they were all wearing cameras around their neck. So the first question I asked is, who is the largest consumer of silver? Well, at that point in time, it happened to be Kodak. You know, for all of that film to be processed, they needed to use silver nitrate, and all of the pictures that were being taken that day needed to have silver so that it needed to be mined from our mines here and elsewhere so that silver nitrate could be used for that. Well, today, our society is requesting that alternative energy projects be developed. So Kodak isn't the one using all of these silver minerals. We have other companies now that are developing solar panels. If we want a solar panel, silver is required to be mined. If we want other alternative energy projects like wind generators, we need metals for turbines and converters and transmission lines. All of these need to be mined from resources like we have here in the San Juans. Now, what about these little silly devices that many of us are carrying around? You know, we've become quite dependent upon those. But where are these materials coming from these days? They're coming from China. Well, Mountain Pass is being reopened in California. We don't necessarily have a lot of rare earths just sitting waiting to be developed here, but we haven't been looking that closely. That's something we need to do here. But what about that Toyota Prius? You know, we're looking at transportation needs that we have. We're looking at hybrid cars and all of the materials they need. Where is that all going to come from? They use many minerals and resources, many of which are found here in the San Juan. So we do have a bit of a conundrum here. We want to use all these devices in our everyday lives. We have available resources here in our own backyard, and other countries are presently providing those materials for our use. So I really don't want to see us becoming dependent upon those countries like we are with the Middle East and oil. So how do we proceed? Well, we need again to be working together, to be cooperative, respectful, and I'm just asking today that we be receptive to some other ideas. We need to cooperate and continue to work together. We need to be encouraging economic development within our communities, and we need to be supporting mining and associated industries. We need the additional jobs that will allow each of us to continue to live here and provide for our families. So can we do this without any environmental impacts? Well, I don't think we can. Can we do it with minimal environmental impacts? Well, I think that's really the goal we need to look at. And we need to keep working together, learning from each other, and trying to do that in an area such as this. Reasonable rules and regulations are necessary, both to protect our environment and to set the bar for what has to be achieved. But they need to be reasonable and they need to be attainable. Unrealistic regulations unrealistic regulations prevents or discourages any outside investments. So we need to keep that dialogue open and work together so that we can achieve the purposes that both sides of the aisle have on these issues. One of the questions I do have, and was pointed out earlier, are our present stream standards reasonable and attainable? Do we need to be looking at those and seeing in this highly mineralized area, what are those stream standards really needing to be? Because if I start to open a mining operation and apply for a water discharge permit, and with the water that's just naturally there, if I can't come close to that stream standard, how are we going to work that out? Let's look at those things a little bit closer. This whole topic is not just a one-way street or a closed door option. And it's not closing the gates on either side of the mountain and saying, well, I'm here now, so let's not have anybody else come in here. We all need to work together, as I've been saying. Now, one of the prayers that we use in the Episcopal Church on a regular basis says, give us all a reverence for the earth as your own creation, that we may use its resources rightly in the service of others. We don't say lock them up and never use them. We say use them rightly in the service of others. I believe we can use, develop, and serve our nation's needs while still maintaining environmental concerns for our water, land, air, and the beauty of this special place. We can work together and make this a better place for all of us. A better place for mining, agriculture, tourism, recreation, solitude, and most importantly, service to others.